Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. Today, we have Elsie Spittle with us, and Elsie probably doesn't need an introduction, but just in case you don't know, Elsie has been an internationally recognized trainer and consultant for over 4 decades. She's one of the few people who knew Sid Banks, the originator of the three principles, before he had his profound insight and stuck by him despite her own early strong resistance. And I really love the topic that you picked today, if you're still going to talk about that, Elsie. So I thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure when you come on or anytime we get to talk. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Bonnie. And it's always lovely to see you and get your emails and have a conversation that way. I just want to let you all know that in all seriousness, I started this journey when I was 12. Because when I hear Bonnie say like over 4 decades ago, it's like, oh my goodness, I feel like maybe Abraham Lincoln 4 score and, that the length of time. Because on one hand, I'm 75. And so on one hand, there are some mornings I feel 75 and other mornings where I just feel so young at heart and vital. And for me, that's one of the biggest gifts of this understanding is that as we age, we've got the gift of evolution through these principles. And that because there's always something new, insights come to us all the time, and insights keep us vital. They bring true knowledge to our lives and help enhance our lives. And I love that. If I had nothing else in my life but knowing that we continue to evolve and that keeps us young. It sounds funny because evolution, you think maybe you don't feel young, you don't feel vital, but I love that. And in terms of this topic, see beyond the form of change to the source of change. That really has been stirring in my soul for the last couple of months, if not more. And sometimes I think, I don't know if I'm just takes me longer to learn and for things to really settle in. Because I remember when I had the insight about all of us being mentored by mind, that stayed with me for several years. And it kept gaining ground. It kept blossoming for me. That one insight blossomed into so much more. And now I feel the same with seeing beyond the form of change to the source of change. And as I've reflected on it, and again, even this morning, I had some insights yesterday that I wanted to share. And then when I woke up this morning, I had fresh insights about the same topic. And so I chucked that one away because here's something new. What will come out in the moment, I still don't know. I just trust that wisdom will guide me. But one of the things is that I have such respect for the younger generation in the Three Principles community. And I don't mean necessarily younger in age, but newbies at whatever age, just coming into this understanding and learning about it and how then it helps us gain a fresh perspective about our life and the world. And so as I've observed every now and then when I look at Facebook and other people's Facebooks and I see what some of the younger generation are offering and how passionate they are about what they're offering to help change the world, to change the racism and injustice and just all the mess that's in the world. And it has struck me over and over again that it's not really any different than when I came into this understanding and what was going on in our lives in the mid 70s with civil unrest and students sitting in on colleges to demand and protest change, the Vietnam War, all of that was going on. There was a great mess, just as there is a mess now. Perhaps there's additional because of the pandemic as well. But what I kept coming back to is what Sid always said to us. Don't get involved in the mess. Stay home. Stay inside. When we change from the inside out, our world will change. The world will change. And I've experienced that. I feel I've been privileged over this 45, 46 years that I've been a student and worked in a variety of human endeavors. But I think the two that really stand out in my mind is working in Black and Brown communities, working in disenfranchised communities where firsthand I could see that I was really protected because I didn't know anything about community development. I didn't have any expertise to fall back on. The only thing I could count on was wisdom and the residents' wisdom. But how to engage the residents' wisdom, how to move beyond their mental state of mind and perspective on the mess that they were living in. And I know that when I first started to share and do this work, sort of my first clientele were people involved in business. And either they wanted some assistance from me in terms of their own state of mind and how to work in a more satisfactory way with their employees, or at some point then they started to actually bring me into their companies, the corporation, to work with them. And then the late Dr. Roger Mills, because he was a community developer, was brought into Modelo. And perhaps some of you saw the program with Jack Pransky and the young woman who ended up doing an audio tape of Jack's book, The Modelo Project. And I had the privilege of meeting some of the residents who came to speak at the annual conference in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I was so moved by their presence, first of all, just seeing them live on stage before they said a word. There was this vitality. There was this aliveness in their faces. There was life in their faces. There wasn't despair or distress or anxiety. There was an aliveness in their faces that spoke to my soul. And at the end of that conference and hearing them talk, and I was familiar with the program because, I was working with Roger a bit. And I thought to myself after this conference, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to work in communities with residents and offer this understanding of the three principles. How that would unfold, how that could possibly happen, I didn't know. And I know one of the things that Roger shared with me when he went into Modelo, because he then consulted with Sid and said, okay, I've got this community to go in. And even the police are afraid to go into Modelo because the crime is so horrendous there. And so he said to Sid, I'm not really sure, like, how do I introduce the principles to them? And Sid just said, get to know them. Like, don't talk about the principles right off, like just get to know them. Just be with them. And Roger, in his expertise, called that building rapport. Building rapport. Not rapport based on just idle chit chat, but rapport based on him seeing the innate mental health in the residents, whether they were addicted, whether they were doing crime to support their addiction. He saw beyond their behavior to the source of change, should the community embrace this. And as time went on and I began to look around where we were living at the time in the Tampa Bay region in Florida, I really wanted to be able to do community development. And so I got a list of all the disenfranchised communities in the district, and there were 13 of them. And so I went out to change the form. And I knocked on doors. I did cold calls. I did cold phone calls. I did everything I knew how to do and things that I didn't even know how to do. I just went out and did it. It was tremendous training trying to change the form, to introduce this understanding. And because I came from that perspective of changing the form, rather than looking at the source of change, being perspective, mindset, levels of understanding, levels of consciousness, the people didn't listen to me in the same way because I was attached to their form of their community and what was wrong with their community. So they weren't as open to listening to me. This is the magic of coming from the source of change rather than the form of change. Because after I went to all 13 communities with no success, one thing I respected after the fact is that I was disappointed, yes. But what helped me with my disappointment is knowing that I truly had done the best I could, given where my thinking was, where my level of consciousness was at that time. I did the best I could. And so then my disappointment wasn't as deep, and I wasn't so gripped by it. And so then I just slipped back into, I don't know. Where do I go next? Maybe I'm not meant to do community development. I don't know. And I didn't even linger long in like, what do I do next? Trying to figure out what my purpose was. Like, how do I share this? I just accepted I don't know and rested in not knowing, again, to the best of my ability at that level of understanding. Out of that resting in not knowing, I got a phone call from another disenfranchised community that was not on my list. And they said to me, Elsie, we've heard that you're associated with Dr. Roger Mills. We've heard that you've had something to do with Modelo in Miami. Our resident council would like to speak with you. Long story short, I ended up working in that community for 3 years, not knowing anything, again, about how to change the community. I went in as such a novice. What stuck in my mind was get to know the community, just hang out with them. And so once I raised the funds to do this 3-year program, I'd never done that before, didn't have a clue how to raise funds, but a client who had a foundation sort of took me under his wing and introduced me to some other foundations, and then just turned me loose and said, go and talk to them that you need some funds. He gave me a challenge grant and said, talk to them about this challenge grant and see if they'll meet it. What's a challenge grant? I'd never heard of a challenge grant, but off I went with this in my pocket with an extremely simple proposal. And that again came from wisdom, because I didn't know how to put together like the type of proposal that Roger had when I was working with him. His expertise would have maybe 20 pages of a proposal. I had 3, which was just perfect for me because it was what I felt, what I knew, what I was comfortable with. And because I was working with a community where half the population were illiterate and the resident council was about half and half, that was wonderful for them too, to have this simple proposal and to have somebody in there who was saying, look, I'm honored that you've invited me into your community. I don't know anything about community development. I don't know anything about your community. What I can offer you is what I understand about the three principles and how it's changed my life and my family's life, how I've seen it change the people that I work with in community, in companies and so on. And they respected that because up to that point, they had been mandated to have other experts come in from Washington, D.C., who came in to fix the community. And here am I saying, I don't know how to fix your community. What do you want? You know, what's important to you? And so as they started to converse with each other, and then they brought back to me, we'd like you to work with our youth first, because they're the ones that are really struggling. They're the ones that are easy prey for the gangs in our community. They're the ones that are more moved towards drugs and addictions and alcohol and whatever. Work with our youth first. How do we do that? And they said at the same time, you know, work with our resident council. So again, I just sort of set that aside, put that into the simple proposal, got the funds, and spent 3 months hanging out with them. I went to their homes when I was invited. I went to sports day when the kids were in sports day. I went to the field and cheered the kids on. I took the kids home from sports day to their homes. You know, we'd get like a lunch and go to the park. Some of the resident council and myself, like I just hung out with them. But what I discovered is that in our ordinary everyday conversations in the park or at sports day, there'd be something that would come out. They might ask a question about my life, or they might say, like, we know you're going to be bringing in this training in a while, but like, you know, we've heard you say something about thought. You know, what's that about? And so then I might say a paragraph about thought, and that would be it. And then we'd be cheering the kids again. It was very, very easy and gentle, this introduction to this understanding. And it was completely driven by the residents because I didn't know how to do it. And not knowing, again, kept me from getting into the mess for the most part. And so then, because I was the only white woman coming into the community, there started to be rumors that came out that I was a narc. Do you know what a narc is? A narcotics agent. And they thought that I was there to then feed back information to the police. But of course, then the resident council, when they became aware of this rumor, said, no way, you know, she's here to help us and you can trust her. And that coming out from the resident council, because they were residents, they lived there, and they had a great deal of respect from the rest of the community, they accepted that, well, okay, maybe she's okay, we'll see. But again, because I kept turning to the residents, like, what to do? What do you want? How does this look like? When I started to do training with the residents inside the resident council community center, once again, some of the gang members there got suspicious. Like, are you hiding? Like, what are you guys learning about? Well, I didn't know how to handle that. And I said to the residents, what do you think? Like, how can we work around this? How can we dispel the unease in the rest of the community, because the resident council was starting to change. Just the looks on their faces as their stress and their judgment about each other, about their neighbors, about the gangs, about the police in the community, that started to diminish because they were seeing the police are doing the best they can given their level of understanding. My neighbor, who I've been suspicious of, and he's a drug dealer, I see he's doing the best he can given his level of understanding. So nowhere were the residents saying to the other residents, oh, you're bad, I'm judging you. They were seeing to the source of change. They weren't judging the behavior. And their faces were changing because they weren't blaming and they weren't judging. And so they started to get the look on their faces that I observed in the Modelo residence and that I was so taken with. And so when this thing, this unease about, well, what is she training? You know, what is she talking to you about? How do we dispel this? The residents came up with, let's do our training outside. Let's take our flip chart. In those days, I used a flip chart and wrote down things. Let's take the flip chart out into the neighborhood, out into the street, and let's cook. Let's barbecue and roast some wieners and some smokies. And believe me, the resident council said to me, when they see us outside and they smell the wieners on the barbecue, we're going to get loads and loads of people coming to hear. But they said, let's not feed him until after you finish your talks. Right? And so that's what we did. We moved from neighborhood to neighborhood outside with our flip chart, all the residents in a circle, me doing a little bit of training, and then, you know, having the residents share and talk about what they're seeing. And I tell you, we had some really nice turnouts. It was beautiful, resident driven. So the mess in their community started to change, not by them directly addressing or confronting the mess, but inviting other residents in, sharing food with them, sharing love with them, sharing non-judgment with them. And then the next thing the residents said, you know, as you're working with the kids, and the kids love to do the graffiti and gang emblems and symbols and things like that, we would love for the kids to have an opportunity to do a positive graffiti in the neighborhood. And they had a community hall that was operated by what was called HUD, Housing Urban Development. That was based, of course, was a government agency based in Washington, D.C. And so they actually operated it and had like a manager there. It was in terrible shape. The residents weren't allowed even to use it because it was just stored full of junk, broken stoves, refrigerator, like all kinds of junk. And there was no room to have larger community meetings because as more residents became interested, the resident council little center became too small. Where can we meet? Well, there's a community center, but it's full of junk. So the residents went to the manager of the community center and said, look, our meetings are getting too big. We have no room. We would really like you to move out the junk and we'll come in and we'll help paint. Our kids will help paint. So they didn't demand, they requested for the community center to be cleaned up, but it was such a strong request from the community at large, not just 3 or 4 people. It was like a community standing together with dignity and respect, and treating the manager, who previously they did not like, treating the manager with this newfound respect and saying, we want this cleaned up. This is our community. We'll help you. What would you like us to do? And in that community, then, when they talked to the kids in that community center, they said to the kids, we would love for you to do a mural, do your graffiti inside this community center. Once the walls are freshly painted, we would like you to come up with your vision for the community. And there were 2 age groups. There was like the elementary age group, and then there was the teen age group. And they each came up with their vision for how they saw their community in a positive way. Like, they didn't say, get out the drug dealers. I'm scared to go in the playground. They didn't judge the police. Their vision was positive. For the young kids, their vision was playgrounds. We want a playground. We want swings. We'd like some lawn. So they had an artist from the community come in with them and help them sketch that out on one wall, their vision of this lovely playground. The teenagers came up with a vision of unity in the community. And they drew a globe, a world with all different ethnicities around the world in this circle, all different ethnicities. And in the center of this circle was the lead funder of this program, the gentleman that had taken me under his wing to help me raise the funds to do this program and to hire residents to do outreach in this community. And they loved this gentleman, this funder. And so at their own volition, they painted like a wee picture of him in the center of this globe with all the different ethnicities from the world in this globe. Their vision from the source of change. And because it was a visible change, and now we have this community center that is freshly painted. It smells good. We can hold our meetings there. The other residents who still weren't part of the training could see this playground painted on the wall. They could see the vision of all these different ethnicities, unity in the community. And that spoke volumes because it was their kids that did this. One last step in this community in terms of what I'm going to share with you. There were more, but I'll just share this one last step. The playground became a reality. When we saw how much the kids longed for this playground, I started talking again with the residents and a few other people that were working with me kind of in the background. And together we came up with the idea of soliciting lumber to make like a sandbox, finding out where to get swings. We got food donated, and we had a work party between the community and other people we brought in from the foundations that had, given funds for this program, so that they not only gave funds, but they had an opportunity to be an active part of the changes that were taking place in that community. It was an amazing event on the weekend to see this vision that had been painted on the wall come to life in their community. It was absolutely an extraordinary time in this community. The last thing I'm going to end before I take questions here is they were some of the kids, and there was one adult from outside the community who had a video camera and was taking pictures of all this going on. And I wanted to get a picture of the kids. And so I, borrowed the video camera, and I'm closing the wrong eye. The eye that I'm supposed to have it open so I can see what I'm filming. It's closed, me and technology. And some of the kids in the community said, Miss Elsie, you've got your eye closed. You need to open your eye when you're taking a video. And so I thought, okay, right. Yes. Thank you, dear. So yeah. So I opened my eyes and was able to take a little video of the kids at play. And so, this is the thing. So often, with the best intentions, we offer dialogue innocently based still in a bit of judgment and blame. We offer what we think is understanding couched in, well, if you're talking about spiritual activism, you need to do something. And what I hear and the dialogue I've had with some is that their doing means going into the mess and actually doing. If that's what they see, I respect that. I've done that kind of doing at many, many, many years ago when my husband was working for a pulp mill and there were protests about, about unions. I protested. I held my banner and I walked and Ken walked and we did our thing. I love spiritual activism. I love Sid's phrase, doing without doing, where you share love and understanding, and that helps shift people's level of consciousness so they can see the source of change and they can offer whatever they're moved to offer from the source of change rather than really still trying to change the form. And what's been the most learning for me is to not get caught up in judgment myself when I see others who are maybe laying a little bit of onus on, well, just because you say you're spiritual, you still have to do something. I come full circle back to doing without doing. And that if we're operating from love and understanding and non-judgment and can have a dialogue and can listen deeply from the source, I will say with all due respect that those of us that can do that will come away from there enlivened instead of exhausted. Because that's what I see happening with some that are so passionate about changing the form. And honest to God, my heart goes out to them because I see their exhaustion. I've seen that in their honesty that they've actually said, I'm passionate about this. I'm going to do this, but wow, I'm exhausted. So it may not be popular, everything I'm saying in this, but so be it. Okay, I'm open for comments or questions.
If you can raise your digital hand, or if you can unmute yourself, please do that. But I don't see anybody waving.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, Isabel?
Hi, Elsie. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Isabel.
Hello.
Is it Isabel or
Isabel.
Isabel? Okay, hi.
Hello. I just want to thank you so much for, in a sense, guiding this group and us, taking us maybe to that next level. I love your unashamed, just open, direct saying, let's return to the source. Let's return to the guidance coming from God. I mean, let's just say it. And we've gotten so good at the 3 Ps and understanding, thought, mind, principle, all those things, all the principles. But you're really coming full circle now and speaking out that we are the presence when we show up, literally the presence of Christ itself, that energy. And I know Sid used that word, and he may have kind of retracted it to try to get along with the psychologists and all these, all these scientific experts. But you're really opening it up again. And I just wanted to thank you for that, because that's where people see the difference. They get inspired by that actual experience of you and your certainty, but it's not just techniques and steps and all those things. So
That's
thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Isabel. Honestly, you've just really touched my heart and my soul by what you've said. Thank you so much. Thank you. Is this making sense to you? Like, even if it's just a showing of a nodding of heads, is this making sense to you about coming from the source? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I haven't been able to, go down to the other side of the other participants, but I really appreciate that. Alan, I see. Hi.
Hi.
So nice to see you actually in person. It's been many years since I've seen you in person.
It's been very fun, and what a journey this has been, Elsie. What a journey.
Yes.
I just wanted to say how sweet this has been, and fun at the same time as well, and how over the decades, right, that we've known each other, the the compelling nature of what we see has pulled me away from the inside out understanding, over and over again, and I'm always drawn back to that. And I'm so grateful to have I guess lived long enough to finally settle in to the reality and the power of source, as you've been talking about. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much, honestly. And again, it just does my heart and soul so good to see you here. And you're a pioneer for sure, Alan. Thank you. Is there anyone else? And I see Marty and Cheryl. It's lovely to see you. And Michael, and I mean, I could name all of you here, that it's just so nice. Kaja, I met you in London, yes. I think you were here to the island. Do you want me to carry on? Okay, I'm gonna slip into something else then that just struck me about trusting the source, no matter what. I had a request from a young woman a few days ago who was been diagnosed with two very, very serious medical issues. And and she asked to speak with me. And when she, you know, mentioned on in her email what the issues were, I thought, wow, I've not experienced anything like that. I've had physical issues and so on and so forth, and I've learned a great deal from that. I've learned that the body and spirit are one. I've learned to respect my body as an expression of spirit. But it took a long time for me to learn that, because I thought spirit was everything, that formless essence behind life. Nonetheless, I didn't know what to do, how to talk with this young woman, but I felt moved. And I'm always guided by the feeling of the source. And that's what then moved me to talk to her, not knowing what to say and how I might help. And so when I started to talk with her, I just wanted to get a sense of her world now. So in a way, I wanted to get a sense of the mess, right? I didn't know that's where I was going to start. It's just what came to me in the moment intuitively, and it felt right just to be respectful of her current reality. And so she shared with me for maybe 10, 12 minutes. And what I noticed in her sharing is that she was very matter of fact. She wasn't wobbly. You know, she wasn't weepy or agitated. She was very matter of fact. And this struck me. And so then when she had said all she wanted to say, and there was a pause, still not knowing where to go, what came out of me is I said to her, and so in this situation that you've described, is there anything you're grateful for? And when the words came out, I was rather taken aback by it. It's like, holy crap, you know, like she's just shared this. Had it been me diagnosed with what she'd been diagnosed, two major situations, oh man, I'm sure I would have been weeping and moaning and groaning and so on. And I don't know that I would have appreciated somebody saying to me, and so in this situation, what are you grateful for? But that's what came out of me. And once again, you know, there was this pause. And then she came out with beautiful nuggets of gold. In amidst the gravel of her diagnosis, here's the gold in the gold pan. I'm grateful for my family because it's brought me closer to my family. I'm grateful to my partner because we're looking at each other and our relationship in a different way. I'm grateful for healthcare, the healthcare we have access to. I'm grateful for a fresh perspective on life. I'm grateful for life. Wow. Honestly, I've got chicken skin here, just as I share with you what she said to me. And I honored that and supported that in her. And I said to her, like, that is so significant what you've shared with me, what you see, what you're grateful for. There have been many times when I've talked to someone desperate, in need, somebody who's been suicidal, somebody who's been addicted, had no hope. And as they've shared their reality with me, I've heard nuggets of wisdom. I've asked them if they see any nuggets of wisdom in there. Most of the time, they've said no. They've actually jumped on me to say, like, what, are you crazy, lady? You know, my daughter just committed suicide. How can I possibly be grateful in that scenario? And I said, for you to share with such love what you're grateful for is just extraordinary. And I honor that in you. And she said, oh, you know. And it was like, she wasn't dismissive, but it was kind of a cool, where I could see that she really didn't see the significance of it. It was still sort of matter of fact to her. And I knew then that was my job, so to speak. If I could help her deepen that it was more than, if I could help her come to honor what she said to me, I knew that it would help her even more. And so that was the next part of our conversation, was to help her see who she is on the inside. And then toward the end of our conversation, when she was seeing so much, because I also mentioned to her how struck I was by her level of calmness, her level of matter of factness, as she shared with me her diagnosis and her prognosis, which is a bit iffy, and still matter of fact. And she hadn't really noticed that. She hadn't noticed and honored her calmness. It was just like, you know, we take it for granted. We take our learning, our growth, our vitality, we end up taking for granted. I know I do. And then it's when I talk with perhaps a new client that I see something new. I see the depth, and I come to a new level of honoring. And so at the end, toward the end of the call, I said to her, you know, as you've shared with me, it feels like this has been a gift to you. And she nodded her head. She said, I'm seeing that. She said, I've got time off work. I was exhausted at work, and now I've got time off work to just heal and take care of myself. It's not often when people have been diagnosed with really serious illness that they can see that as a gift. My husband did. When he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 12 years ago. When he first got that, because I asked him yesterday, as a matter of fact, I said, like, I'm going to be talking to this young woman. What was it like for you when you were first diagnosed with cancer? Because what I remember of Ken is him saying to me very soon after this diagnosis, I know I'm more than my disease. And he lived there. He did the treatment, he did whatever was required to do, had major surgery, had numerous minor surgeries. He lived in, I know I'm more than my disease. And I said to him, so like, what would you say to this young woman? He said, I don't know. And then he finally said, live life, just live your life. He said, I will say, when I first got the diagnosis, it was like, wow, whoa. Yeah, it was a shock. And then he came to, well, it is what it is. And decisions came to him from source. If I only have so long to live, I'm taking early retirement. I'm going fishing. We've always got two choices. If you ever get gripped by, what should I do? I don't know what to do. You know, we can have like 1,000 thoughts come to us about what to do. What next? Okay, I'm finished with this program in my business. I'm not really feeling it anymore. Now what? I don't know what. Well, I'm going to figure it out. You know, does figuring it out feel good? We've got two choices. We can try to figure it out and get anxious and stressed, or we can just rest in not knowing. We can rest in wisdom. We can rest in trust. Always two choices. Do we want to live in our disease, which is real in the moment? I've got, you know, like here's this young woman saying, I've got this. These are my symptoms. This is the treatment. It's real in the moment. We can live in our disease, or we can live in life. Always two choices. We can live in judgment, or we can live in understanding. We can live in the mess of the world, or we can live in source, where the mess is taken care of. That's the last thing I'm going to say. Please don't feel that when you're not actively protesting or being like a really out there in the activism that feels right to you, please don't take my saying doing without doing, quoting Sid's words, as denial of the mess. I see the mess. I understand the mess is coming from ignorance and lostness. There are times my heart goes out to those that are creating the mess. There were times my heart went out to an unnamed person in the US that created a horrendous mess. And there were times where I judged. And I asked myself the question, do you want to live in judgment of this person? Or do you want to live in understanding of this person's lostness? That's where I'm going to leave you. Where do you want to live? Thank you all so much. Bonnie, thank you for introducing me, and 3PGC for inviting me to offer this webinar. And to all of you, honestly, for participating, whether, well, only a couple spoke, whether you spoke or not. The faces that I could see, I know you contributed, and even the faces that I can't see, you contributed just by showing up, and I thank you for that.
Elsie, thank you so much. This was such a beautiful talk. I have a question. When you were referring to listening to Jack and Risa on Medela, were you talking about the 3PGC podcast?
Yes, that must have been it. I knew it was something that I saw from 3PGC. Was it on the podcast then?
Yeah. So I just want to let everybody know, if you're interested in hearing that, it's, if you go to 3pgc.org and click on We're Listening, that's where you'll find our podcast, and it's the Modelo episode. And then if you download the Modelo audiobook, because I have not listened to it before, and it's such an incredible story. It really is great. And I just also want to let everybody know that the next webinar is with Gail Noble. And I'm really excited about that. So I want to just say an extra word about it. Gail and I have been trying to find a date for her to speak. She is going to talk about living with the three principles and a special needs person. And so I think that will be great. I hope a lot of you can join us for that. Elsie, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Beautiful.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.